Well, it's official. One of our Supreme Court justices, which definitely makes you scratch your head as to how many others of them are doing this, has just had a massive pro-Republica piece put out on them, alleging massive ethics violations, basically being bought out by Republican conservative with private jet trips and lavish private chef vacations, donations, political donations to the Supreme Court justices spouse. You've even got the belief that this massive Republican donor potentially helped orchestrate the Supreme Court's shift from where it has been to a more the right, as we've seen over the last few years here with more right-leaning cases favoring those who lean right, such as, for example, with the reversal of Roe v. Wade, something that was previously deemed unimpenetrable or impenetrable, I should say. Yeah, let's get the word right. Now, obviously, this video is not designed to be political. This isn't supposed to be left versus right. It's supposed to be sort of an analysis into, wow, are our Supreme Court justices potentially not politically neutral, despite this lifetime tenure that they get, which is supposed to enable them to be politically neutral? And I mean, the last thing I really feel like we need right now is more jade when it comes to politics. But unfortunately, this was just too mind-blowing not to talk about. So let's take a look at the pro Republica piece, and let's add some commentary on it. Do keep in mind, this video is brought to you by my courses on building your wealth. Link down below. We've got a coupon code expiring on CPI Day, which is April 12th, and the prices will be going up after that. So let's take a look at this piece. So, for over 20 years, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been treated to luxury vacations by billionaire and Republican donor Harlan Crow. Now, what's interesting is Harlan Crow is a real estate mogul. His father was actually once deemed the largest landlord in the country. I believe it was 1971 that Harlan Crow and the Crow company, the organization, it's a privately held company. The Crow Company was deemed the largest landlord in the country with over $1 billion in assets in 1971. Currently, it sits somewhere around $18 billion in assets. And the son, Mr. Harlan, who's in his 70s now, he runs the real estate fund. Now, I think that's very interesting because obviously I have a massive real estate background. Not only am I a financial advisor, a licensed financial advisor, but I'm also a real estate broker. And I got my start in real estate. So let's take a look at this. So this starts here by talking about how Clarence Thomas boarded a large private jet, headed to Indonesia. Him and his wife were going on vacation, 9 days to island hopping on a super yacht. If Thomas had chartered the plane and the 162 yacht himself, the total cost of the trip would have exceeded $500,000. Fortunately for him, that wasn't necessary because he went on a trip with a real estate magnate and Republican mega donor, Harlan Crow, who owned the jet and the yacht too. Now, do keep in mind, when you own a plane, it is a lot cheaper to operate than if you charter the plane. Chartering is very expensive. So sometimes the numbers that you're going to see here, I want to just give you a personal insight into this. Some of the numbers that you're going to see here, I think, are relatively, dare I say, inflated, but we're still going to be talking about the meaning behind all of this. Think about, for example, they give an example later in the story about how a flight was taken, I believe it was from Connecticut, Dallas to Connecticut here. Look at this. Thomas even used the plane for a 3-hour trip. On February 11th, 2016, the plane flew from Dallas to New Haven with a pit stop before flying back later that afternoon. Had that plane been chartered, it could have cost around $70,000. Realistically, the actual marginal cost of operating that plane, in my opinion, would probably have been closer to if it's already an owned plane, $2,000 to $3,000 per hour would have been the marginal cost of that plane. So you're probably looking much closer to like $4,000 to maybe $10,000. So some of the pieces of the article will be a little exaggerated because they are using chartered prices rather than normal prices. Owning a jet, I know that. Anyway, okay. So now one of the things I wrote down, I was doing some other research, And I think they actually mentioned it in this story too. Harlan frequently took the position, he's that Republican donor, that, quote, I don't disclose what I don't have to. And it's one of the reasons he likes being a private company. I personally find that's pretty common. A lot of people who don't really like disclosing things and they kind of want to do things their way, they keep their companies private. They don't want the SEC in their life. They don't want regulation in their life. And to some extent, it's like, yeah, why would you want to invite more regulators in? But that's sometimes where you can also get sus things where all of a sudden now you've essentially got a Republican mega donor potentially who's got a Supreme Court justice in their back pocket. Could you imagine having the Supreme Court justice in your back pocket to some extent? But anyway, they give some examples here about they vacation, they've gone to all male retreats in California, they've gone to it's called the Bohemian Grove, they've gone to ranches in Texas, Indonesia, I think Hawaii was mentioned over here. And basically, the Supreme Court justice said, hey, look, I never asked for any of it. And because I never asked for any of it, I don't think I have to disclose all of these mega gifts that I've gotten, even though technically ethics law attorneys say any kind of donation, basically over $50, requires disclosure. I mean, here's a line right here. Ethics experts said the law clearly requires disclosure for private jet flights, and Thomas appears to have violated it. Now, he's been a Supreme Court justice since the 90s. My guess is if this continues to get media attention, there's a chance he could be quote unquote forced into retirement. Hate to say it, but it's not a good look, and you'll see how this evolves, especially when we get into what his wife's position is. I think it'll blow your mind, and you're going to want to get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. Hashtag sponsored. Anyway, okay, so it was a question of not wanting to use the office for anything other than it was intended. These are other people, other ethics attorneys who basically say, hey, like, look, or even other judges, retired judges, they say, look, when we make reservations places, we don't want to use our title like Judge Paffrath or whatever. We don't want to do that because we don't want to be unjustly potentially enriched. Now, of course, Thomas makes the argument that, well, Harlan's just my rich friend. Okay, so now we have to kind of evaluate. If somebody's your rich friend, are you supposed to say no to all of their generous vacations and super yacht trips and hotels and private chef food or whatever else? Or should you be reimbursing maybe your fair share, or just at the very least disclosing it? Now, many people here would argue that disclosure would be the best opportunity. Look, if you're going to get these gifts, just disclose it. The problem is, the justice probably is thinking, well, if I disclose gifts I didn't ask for, then people are going to think I'm biased. But now you basically hit the nail in the coffin. Now people definitely think you're biased because not only are you not disclosing it, but you're arguing that you don't need to disclose lavish vacations and gifts from your quote unquote friend. Take a look at this. These gifts include, look at this, soon after Crow met Thomas 3 decades ago, he began lavishing the justice with gifts, including a $19,000 Bible. Folks, a $19,000 for a Bible? Are you kidding me? They have one of these for free in every single hotel room. But apparently this Bible belonged to Frederick Douglass. Recently, Crow gave Thomas a portrait of the justice and his wife. The Crow Foundation then also gave $105,000 to Yale Law School. That's where Thomas went to school. And then we've got, other trips over here. One of the trips included motorboats and a giant inflatable rubber duck. I don't even want to know what artificial intelligence would draw up if we threw into an AI generator. Show me Clarence Thompson with a giant inflatable rubber duck and motorboats. Actually, you know what? I think we have to do it. Hold on. So I have an AI generator here. I'm going to just type it in really quick. Let's do, and then I want to tell you about the wife because the wife is a really interesting piece. So let's do Clarence Thomas Supreme Court Justice with a giant inflatable rubber duck and motor boats. All right, we'll give that a few minutes to show up, but that's going to be ridiculous. So stand by for that. All right, let's go back over here. So, okay, let's keep going. I really want to get to the wife part and some of the judicial action part. So let's keep going here. Okay, so didn't disclose. Okay, we talked about that. So, yeah, here they talk about lifetime tenures for judges are designed to keep people from being politically biased. Okay, now here, look at this. Crow met Thomas after he became a justice. So interestingly, they happened to become, quote, genuine friends after Mr. Thomas became a Supreme Court justice. Of course they did. Anyway, the pair, odd word, have become genuine friends, according to people who know both men, especially since they're going to men's clubs. I mean, I guess that's not terribly abnormal, but abnormal for wealthier people. But anyway, over the years, some details of Crow's relationship with the Thomases have emerged. In 2011, the Times reported that Grove's generosity toward the justice had been growing. At the same time that year, Politico revealed that Crowe had given $500,000, $500,000 to a Tea Party group. So the Republican donor gave 500 grand to a Tea Party group. Listen to this. Founded by the Supreme Court Justice's wife, Ginni Thomas. Ginni Thomas, by the way, she was an election fraud proponent, suggesting that Donald Trump substantially lost the election because of election fraud. I think I actually wrote down a quote over here. Yeah. Look at this. Thomas has been a prominent backer of Trump's lies that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him. That was a quote from The Guardian. So I want to make that clear. This was a quote from The Guardian, and so was the other one. On the 24th of November 2020, Thomas wrote, I can't see Americans swallowing up the obvious fraud, just going with one more thing with no freaking consequences. The whole coup, and now this. She also then says her husband is stubborn and that they don't talk politics. But the fact that they allege they don't talk politics together seems a little far-fetched. I mean, what kind of spousal relationship doesn't chat together about their job? That seems a little weird. Of course, Thomas makes the argument that, oh no, it's boring to talk about politics, so I don't talk about politics with my wife. I'm like, a lot of this just seems ludicrous, like ludicrous hiding from disclosures and trying to run through legal loopholes here. But anyway, apparently that Tea Party group that was founded by the Supreme Court Justice's wife paid her a $120,000 salary and was funded by this guy. And now we're seeing these lavish vacations and private jet trips and super yacht trips and everything without any disclosure, especially since Thomas has been ruling on cases directly involving the real estate industry. I hate to say it here, but I think the corruption is really obvious here. And I think this was the nail in the coffin for corruption. Okay, listen to this. I like this is like the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. Listen to this. I don't have a problem with going to Europe, but I prefer the United States. And I prefer seeing regular parts of the United States, Thomas said in a recent interview for a documentary about his life, which Crow helped finance. Okay, so Crow, the real estate billionaire guy, helped finance this documentary about the Supreme Court justice. And apparently, in the interview, he says the following, quote, I prefer the RV parks. I prefer the Walmart parking lots to beaches and things like that. There's something normal to me about it. I come from regular stock. I prefer that. I prefer being around that. Okay, let me just pause for a moment. And let me just ask, let me just poll the audience, okay? So I'm going to run a poll and I want to see what your answers are. Do you prefer private jet and super yacht vacations or Walmart parking lots? Okay. I, jet vacations, Walmart parking lot. And I'm very curious to see what the results of this poll are, because let's just say I ain't buying it. All right. While that poll runs, let's go ahead and look at what the oh. Oh my God. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Hold on. This is hilarious. So this is the artificial intelligence generated image of Clarence Thompson or Thomas. This don't even look like rubber ducks. Rubber ducks and motorboats. You ready for this? Hold on. This is priceless. Oh my Lord. I mean, his face is like perfect in all of these images too, because he looks like deer in the headlights, like, You got me. uh, step bro, I'm stuck. Help me. Oh my gosh, this is ludicrous. Okay, let's keep going here. So, and then I'm going to review the results of the poll in just a moment. Crow's guests are served meals prepared by private chefs. A painting of the two men at the resort sitting outdoors smoking cigars, alongside conservative political operatives. Then you've got what do we have over here? Frequent vacations. Oh, here we go. And then listen to this. During one trip in July 2017, Thomas's fellow guests included executives at Verizon and PricewaterhouseCoopers, an auditor, both major Republican donors and leaders of the American Enterprise Institute, a pro-business conservative think tank. And then a painting of Thomas at Topridge shows him in conversation with Leonardo Leo, the Federalist Society leader regarded as an architect of the Supreme Court's recent turn to the right. So, and then of course the argument is, nah, these are just gatherings of friends. So yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty obvious here. Now, it's worth looking at his some of his cases and how these could be how he could sort of interpret or affect law. Obviously, if you have more of a Republican tilt and you're hanging out with Republican executives, first of all, think about it from the POV of if you're Crow, the rich billionaire, the real estate billionaire, how easy it is to call up your CEO friends and go, hey man, come on this trip. I'm going to have a Supreme Court justice with us. Talk to him about whatever you want. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's kind of obvious, blatantly obvious that there's going to be some potential for nudging by executives to rule in cases a certain way. It's very difficult to remove biases that you potentially get brainwashed into through vacations and trips over years. And we're talking now decades of this. And of course, Thomas's reply or Crow's reply, yeah, here's the I'm not required to disclose, or I don't disclose what I'm not required to. But anyway, specifically talking about Thomas and his cases. So Thomas he's a conservative. He's a big fan of originalism, but that originalism tilt that he's had has leaned further and further to the right. Now, originalism is this idea that you interpret without new versions or new adaptations to what's in the Constitution. So, for example, today, you're not going to take social media, the internet, you're not going to look at implications of how we live our lives today to help you rule based on constitutional questions. You're just going to basically look strictly at the Constitution. So I'll give you some examples here. In an originalist style case was a Second Amendment case, DC versus Heller in 2008. This is where DC basically tried to ban all firearms, but the Supreme Court overruled that DC is not able to ban that in homes. The Congress also, here's a U.S. versus Bond 2014. Congress was basically overturned by the Supreme Court when Congress banned states from using chemical weapons. Now, I use this one specifically because it's kind of like, why the hell would a state ever have to use chemical weapons? But when you have a super conservative judge that leans right, obviously, that's called leans right. I mean, you are on the right if you're very conservative, and you have the belief of originalism. The originalist argument to overturn Congress's ability to say, look, states are not allowed to use chemical weapons, is you simply say the following. Anything not explicitly provided to the federal government as a power becomes the power of the state via the 10th Amendment. Now, that makes sense when the framers wrote the Constitution, but does it make sense today? We didn't have chemical weapons back then. Of course, they didn't put chemical weapons in the Constitution. But an originalist will say, no, not in the Constitution. Anyway, there's some other examples of originalism. But really, the question here is it reasonable for a judge not his friend gave him 100% off coupon code? Yeah, maybe. See, right now the best you can get is 69% off, a price guarantee going into the future, lowest price possible. Coupon expires on the 12th, and then prices will be going up. And you could use buy now, pay later to get in. So thank you for reminding me of that. But anyway, let's look at the results of this poll right after I just mentioned. You got to ask yourself, is this potentially corruption of the Supreme Court? And the answer here is yes, likely. This is likely corruption of the Supreme Court. I hate to say it because I try not to be jaded, but this is jading. It's scary. All right, let's look at the results of the poll. I think y'all are screwing with me. We only got 66% saying they prefer private jet trips over Walmart parking lots out of 306 votes right now. About yeah, right. I don't believe any of you, but I appreciate the humor in it. So we got a super majority at least to agree that private jet trips are better than Walmart parking lots. Come on, man, Walmart parking lots. You gotta be careful, man. People are trying to attack you with shopping carts all the time. Drive to a Walmart, man. People just come out of anywhere. It's like somehow they come out of Mini Coopers with giant shopping carts ready to door ding, well, shopping cart ding your car. It's crazy. You gotta use Walmart Plus. We had a discussion of it. This is the kind of quality stuff you can get in the course member live streams. And actually, I want to tell you a story about this course member live stream, but we do talk a lot of stuff in the course member live streams. But we did have a discussion about Walmart Plus because we've been doing fundamental analyses, and Walmart Plus is one of the ones we've been talking about. I do quickly want to mention though that if you join the Elite Hustlers course, that's almost a private tiny group exclusive course member live stream for the new course in the Elite Hustlers. So if you're looking for more exclusive access, the Elite Hustlers is a great option. So we've got very few people in the lives. Those are once a week exclusive lives. But if you join any of the courses, you get access to the every day the market is open live streams. Those are great. It's a little bit of a larger group, but we still get a lot of Q&A done. But anyway, one of the things we were talking about was Walmart Plus, and how with Walmart Plus, quite frankly, you should just use Walmart Plus and get your stuff delivered because A, it's included in the price. I mean, yeah, you're going to add a little bit of a tip, but the time you save, A, makes up for it. And B, the fact that you're not going to potentially be subject to impulse purchases that you might in the store. I mean, I suppose you can impulse buy online, but it could be a good thing. Anyway, so Walmart equals the Wild West. Walmart lot has been a friendly, safe place over years of traveling. Don't get me wrong, I like Walmart. I will go to Walmarts as well. I remember the first time I visited Fort Collins. We're like, we need to find a fan because the dorm we're staying in. This was back when I was a police explorer. We didn't have air conditioning, so we're like, we got to find fans. Walmart was the only place, the Walmart Supercenter, that had fans. Although I will say, I'm pissed that they got rid of the garden centers at most of these places. I used to be a big green thumbie, and ever since they got rid of the garden centers at like Targets, the Super Targets, and the Super Walmarts, I'm pissed. Anyway, okay, that gives us a little bit of insight into judicial corruption